Hey there, and welcome to this video where I'm going to give you a tour of our food storage. So basically we are doing a Homestead Pantry tour. I thought it would be really fun after your guys' response to last week's video where I walked you through our complete garden tour and how we raise over 50% of a year's worth of fruits and vegetables for our family of 4. I thought it would be awesome to show you what it looks like when it's translated into our food storage and inside the house, especially what we have left last year. What the pantry looks like at this time is we're just beginning to get into the busyness of our food preservation, and then we'll do update of both the garden and the pantry as we close in later on towards the end of the harvest. But I thought it would be great to show you exactly what our food storage looks like and how much you can actually get from all of those, and the ways that we tuck our food storage into our house. Okay, so you ready? Let's head on over to the first area in the corner of the kitchen. So this is just a corner of our kitchen, and it's actually a built-in office space. So this is my complete office space. You can see the little corner here. And this was just a set of cupboards that came in the house. And so we actually redesigned that, redid the shelving to make this a corner pantry right off the kitchen. So we took off the original cabinet doors that matched over here, these ones, and my husband was lucky enough to get this vintage screen door, and it didn't really fit any of the doors that we have on our house. And because this is old and antique, I didn't want it on our actual front door because we don't have a roof over that, and I didn't want it exposed. So instead, we revamped this area, put this antique screen door on here, and made this my new secondary pantry storage area. Now, we don't have a root cellar, I don't have a basement, and I don't have a garage. We live in a manufactured home. And so we have to be creative, and I know many of you are like that, to find places to have all of our food storage, because when you have food where you are storing a year's worth of specific crops, it's gonna take some space. And we had to make it work within our house. So we redid this whole area. So we took off all of the different cupboard doors that were on here and just put this one door so I can access it all really easily. And surprisingly enough, I have lights here so that you can actually see while I'm filming this, but there is no direct sunlight. This is not next to a window or anything like that. You do not want to store your home canned goods next to sunlight or direct light or heat sources. And this screen actually does provide some little bit of a light block. Okay, so let's take a peek here at this first cupboard. So I'm just gonna go ahead and walk you from the top, and we're gonna work our way down with what we've got. And like I said, the majority of all of this is what we have left from our crops and what we preserved last year. So our goal is to always increase each year by raising one more crop, and enough of that to take us through an entire year that we're not buying any of it from the store. And I gauge how we're planting and what we're planting and the amount that we're planting each spring and summer based on what we have left from the previous year. So it always rotates and changes by the stock that I've got left. So up here we have got 3 rows deep of pickled asparagus. So pickled asparagus is one of our absolute favorites, and the asparagus season is done here. So this is all of our pickled asparagus that I've got up here that's going to take us through the year. I've got a little bit left of blueberry syrup. So this is my last full jar of blueberry syrup. I have got some of my apple pie filling. So I've got a little bit of pie filling left. This is my last jar of apple pie filling, but I do have, I've got about 8 jars left of cherry pie filling in the quart size. This is actually my fire cider. So this is preserved, though it's not canned. And this is one of my favorite medicinal remedies that I made last fall and I have left. I have some homemade dehydrated pasta that we made. And then I've also got a line of I've got a row of I think I've probably got about 8 jars left of pears. Now the pears, I actually do not have a pear tree. And so I was fortunate enough to have a friend that gave us some pears. And then we also have some local farms around here that I can purchase pears from as well. So the pears, even though I have a year's worth preserved of them, I did not grow the pears here on the homestead. Up next, I have got green beans. So we raise our own, my family has our own strain actually of heirloom Tar Heel green pole beans that we've been seed saving for many, many generations, well over 100 years. And so I have never bought green beans from the store. In fact, my kids will not eat green beans from the store if we go places that are serving store-bought green beans that are not home canned. The flavor difference, oh my goodness, is so night and day. So I always make sure, usually I do about 60 jars, so we have at least 1 jar a week. Sometimes I'll do a little bit more of green beans. So I've got rows and rows of our green beans. Here are carrots from last year. So I've got home canned carrots. I've got more green beans, and then I have 1 pint left of my cherry pie filling. And then this is smoked salmon. So we like to lightly smoke our salmon before we go ahead and pressure can that up. This is some of the best stuff to have on hand. It is so good. Make it up into salmon cakes, make it into salmon chowder, just eat it straight from the jar, make a salmon dip with it. We just snacking on it, having smoked canned salmon is super good. And then I've got just a little bit left, a few jars left of venison. So we didn't get a venison last year. This is actually from the year prior, and this is about all I have left of that venison. And then I've also got a few jars here. This is pear butter, and then this is a spicy yellow pepper mustard sauce that's just delicious. And I've also got a few jars hiding back here. This is kind of my odds and end row of some pickled garlic. So here I have got chicken broth. So I've got canned chicken broth. I've got a little bit of dehydrated stuff going on, some orange peel, mint leaves. This is the last of last year's jalapenos. I've got dehydrated jalapenos. And then here I actually have a tincture. I'm making a mint extract. So I've got mint leaves in alcohol for an extract. And then here they're the purple jars. They're the retro vintage purple jars, so it's harder to see the contents, but in there I've got peaches. And then I've got tomato sauce, stewed tomatoes, more tomato sauce, last of the salsa. This is actually just got done making. We just hit strawberry season, so I'm replenishing my jam. So this is a jar of strawberry jam. And then I've got some mustard pickles from last year left, another thing of pears. I've got some dehydrated kale left here from last year's crop, and I'm just beginning to harvest our fresh kale. And then I've got jars of dill pickles. Now in this smaller little shelf back here, I've got some of my favorite garlic red pepper jelly. Oh my goodness, so good. I have got jalapeno jelly. I have got some kale powder. The last of my dehydrated cherries, barely any left, almost not quite a year's worth. I've got dehydrated blueberries. I have got dehydrated tomatoes. And then this is those green beans I was talking about that my family raises. This is the shelled seeds. So you can use these obviously as your seed bean. And I've already got this year's planted. You saw those in the last video, and also how to make a teepee. I'll make sure and link to those videos for growing this food. But these are what you can use as obviously a dried bean. So they're a dual purpose bean. You can use them as a green bean, your seed beans, and then a white dried bean. So I've got a jar of that. Now the split peas we did not grow, but I do have split peas in here. I've got some sage, I've got some mint that are dried, and then this is another bean that we grow, same thing, passed down in my family for hundreds of years, and it's an October bean. So this is an heirloom shelled bean. They're bigger than a pinto. They're meatier when you cook them up, and the flavor is amazing. And we call them an October bean because typically that is when you harvest them. So they come on at the end of the season when they're really big and large enough, mature enough to shell out. And so these are what I use when I'm making soups and chilies and soup beans, and I use them for refried beans, all of that. So these are our shelled beans that we grow here. So the next row that I have here in this pantry area is my jam and my jelly shelf. So this one is a narrower shelf, so I can fit pint-sized jars, and it works really well for the smaller jars. So here I have got blueberry, a little bit of blueberry syrup in these 2 jars. So that's about the last of my blueberry syrup. Then this is a rhubarb barbecue sauce. So I love rhubarb, one of my favorite crops that we grow and flavorize. So I have rhubarb barbecue sauce. This is blueberry jam. Got quite a few blueberry jams. This is some strawberry jam, and this one is leftover from last year, and I think it's my last jar of strawberry, which is why I've got more that I just finished canning, and they are going to go in here to replenish that. And then this is cherry jam. This is one of my favorites. This is pear butter. Now I know people talk about apple butter and peach butter, but pear butter happens to be my personal favorite. I love pear butter. So I've got pear butter, and then this is apple pie jam. So this is a low sugar apple pie jam that's really good. And so I love to have this one. It's one of my favorites, and I think I only have a few more jars left of this one, and our apples won't be quite ready for a few more months out, so this is just gonna have to tide us over. And then last but not least, I have plum butter. So these are the plums from our tree, and I've got plum butter. I do have some different ones. Some I put some spices in, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of ginger, you know, kind of whatever we're feeling like to do up the butters. I like the fruit butters because you can really play with the flavors with adding in different spices. So plum butter, excellent to have. Now down here, this is not really a lot of food that we have grown ourselves, but just so you can see my pantry, this is our dry goods area. So I have lentils, I have dried orange slices, I've got some walnuts, I've got some popcorn. I've got my dried chamomile. This is my own herbal blend for immune boosting tea. So I've got that done up in bulk. Got some hemp hearts. I have got some almond flour. What else do I have in here? Oh, I have lavender infusing in oil for salves and balms to make later. Quinoa and cornmeal is what I've got snuck in the back there. And then this section, and I love these because these drawers pull out. So I've got some rice here. I've also got, I do have, which I'll show you in the next stop on our pantry tour, but I also do purchase some store-bought raw apple cider vinegar because when you are canning and you're doing pickling recipes, you need to make sure that it's 5% acidity. So using store-bought vinegar that says 5% acidity is really key. And so I do purchase store-bought vinegar to use in my canning recipes. I've got some cocoa powder, almond flour, chia seeds, dried coconut. Coconut is not something we can grow here in the Pacific Northwest. Some more brown rice. What else do I have? Oh, and I've got a few packets, I know, believe this or not, of instant mashed potatoes. But my kids love to have these on hand. So every now and then we do have some convenience items in on the homestead. And so instant mashed potatoes, even though I know I could make my own, I could do my own potatoes and I could dry them and make my own instant mashed potatoes, this is one of those kind of processed luxuries that we have in the house. And chocolate chips. We gotta have our chocolate. And so this pantry is the one that I cook from and I use. So when you're having a year's worth of food, especially when you get into multiple years, because all of this was processed and put up last year, I want to make sure that we're using this first, and so that this year's harvest will go into our other pantry and we practice our food rotation. So this is the foods that I keep right in the kitchen that I'm pulling from and I'm cooking from and that we're eating out of. And then I'm going to take it and show you the other area where I have the rest of our home food storage. Okay, so we are actually going to take a walk into my laundry room to reach the other place. You ready? So this is the outside door. So if you were going to go outside, you would be exiting through that door. And this is one of our upright freezers where we store the majority of our meat. So we raise and butcher all of our own beef, pork, meat, chickens, and then we also have salmon and crab, and if we get a venison. So as you can imagine, when you have that much meat, even though you saw I do can some of our meat, we do use our freezers primarily for our meat storage, what we're not canning. So I have that in this upright freezer, and then here, so this was just a regular, kind of like a coat vacuum closet when you came in the door from outside into where our laundry room is. And we converted this instead to be another area where we could keep all of our home canned goods and our food storage. So my husband built these shelves. So they're just plain using plywood and sturdy metal brackets and making sure that you have them supported really well so that you've got all of the weight of your home canned food isn't going to collapse underneath it. So you want to make sure that they're definitely good and sturdy. So this is where I have some of my leftover food that we preserved last year, where I don't have enough room to move it into the cupboard that is in the kitchen that we're actively using. So this is my overflow, and this time of year, I have got definitely some rows of empty jars that are going to be waiting for me to fill back up with the summer harvest when it comes on. But we have got garlic. So I've got some braided garlic hanging out here. And then up here, this is some of our candied pickled jalapenos that we have left. This is a spicy plum sauce. Actually, it's sweet and spicy plum sauce that I have left over. Some jars of canned stewed rhubarb. And then this is what I've got left of our applesauce and our pear sauce. So I turn pears into pear butter and pear sauce, as well as whole pears, or halved. They're halved when I can them. And then I've got my applesauce. The last from last year, I dehydrate up our zucchini into zoodles, and we dehydrate those. So I've got a few packs left of that. And then I've got garlic and dill, which is my favorite combination, cucumbers, which are pickled. A few jars left of bread and butter pickles. This is one of our favorites. This is a mustard pickled relish, which is the best spread on hamburgers and hot dogs. And if you're going to make potato or macaroni salad, this has the onions in it, it has the cucumbers in it, and it's got the mustard. So all you got to do is add your eggs, potatoes, and mayonnaise. Boom, ready to go. Now here, I have got some tomato sauce. So all of our tomato products, we have 18 to 20 tomato plants, and I can up enough tomato sauce, stewed tomatoes, and salsa, anything that is based with tomatoes, to last us an entire year. So I've got some of my tomato sauce left here, as well as a few more jars of our canned carrots. And if you keep these boxes that your jars come in with the dividers, I like to use these because I actually can get one more row deep on these shelves. That sticks out just a little bit so that I can fit more on here. Again, this is a little bit more of my tomato sauce in here. And then on this side, I've got another case of green beans. And then down over here. And then here, I've got a little bit more of our dry goods. So I've got some quinoa. I have got some buckwheat. Then here I've got some of our dehydrated foods. So I have got some of this is actually dehydrated tomato skins that I have left. And then I've got shredded carrots and diced carrots that are dehydrated, all from our garden. We've got a little bit more of rice, and then I also have a little bit more of, actually that is brown rice, and then that is jasmine rice behind it. This is a jar of my homemade apple cider scrap vinegar, and I do have a video showing how to make that. I'll make sure and link to it in the description below. some more of our dehydrated homemade egg pasta noodles. And these are all of our empty jars that are just waiting to be filled with the rest of the summer harvest as it comes in. So we'll come up here again, more empty jars. Here I've got some of my cinnamon sticks, and then this is a little bit of dehydrated orange peel. And then this is just empty jelly and jam jars in here that need to be filled up as well. On the floor here, storage-wise, there is where I store my 21.5 quart All-American pressure canner. There I've got some of my hard white organic wheat for grinding our own flour. This is where I keep my wide mouth canning bands as well as the reusable wide mouth Tatler lids. More apple cider vinegar for canning, and then I keep a big old bucket of Redmond sea salt for when I'm using salt for our preserving and of course just using and eating, and I try to keep that on hand in bulk as well. So I hope you enjoyed that tour of our pantry and our home food preservation. And if learning how to preserve food at home is something that you're interested in, make sure that you, one, subscribe to the channel and click the link below in this video description, because I have got some great free resources that will also help you preserve your food at home. And you will notice in this pantry tour, I did not have any of our fermented foods except for the homemade apple cider vinegar, because at this time, I've went through all of our fermented food. It doesn't last us all the way through until spring because I simply don't have the cold storage space. But as we get along further in the summer, you will definitely begin to see those fermented foods coming back into our kitchen. Let me know in the comments below if you are doing home food preservation and if you have any questions on any of the things that I showed you or went over that you would love me to do another video on or go in further in depth so that I can make sure that I am helping you create your homestead. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you next week.